Welcome to another episode of the CPG Guys podcast. Our co-hosts, Shri Rajagopalan and Peter V.S. Bond, explore how brands and retailers engage with consumers online, in-store, and everywhere in between. And now, here are Shri and Peter.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the CPG Guys podcast. I'm Shri, one of the aforementioned CPG guys, and I love to discuss branding, direct-to-consumer, omnichannel retail P&L, connected commerce, retail media, and marketplaces. And as always, I'm joined by my co-host, an expert at digital shelf content, retail success, customer data, insights, CRM, and loyalty. And there's something new that's very disturbing that I'm seeing with him, and that is he fancies himself as an emerging social media maven on Clubhouse, and you can often find him featured. So, please join me in welcoming the man himself, Mr. Bond. How are you today, sir?
Well, you know, Shri, you are the salsa to my verde, the blue to my agave, and the red to my wine. We just make things more colorful together. I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing awesome, Peter. Thanks for asking. I'm still waiting for the Saquon Barkley, Daniel Jones thing. I know this one we agree on because we're both Giants fans.
Yeah.
Thank you, Peter. But before we get to our special guest today, I want to remind our audience that all of our content, including our series on profitability, our women's leadership series that we ran back in late 2020, and our ongoing Founders series in Q1 of 2021 can be found on cpgguys.com. Our show's content is always driven by you, the audience. We do this here for education purposes. That is our number one goal. So the more you tell us how you'd like us to shape the show, the guests you want to hear on the show, the faster we get on it. And you can do this easily by going to ratethispodcast.com/CPG Guys, our name again, CPG Guys, and leave us a rating and review on the Apple platform. And we really sincerely want to thank you for doing that already for us and for leading us in the right direction in the transformation of this industry. Now, on to our episode. I think our audience knows that in a post-pandemic world, D2C for brands is non-negotiable. But for most brands, the effort to build a meaningful D2C operation seems excessively challenging and sometimes completely out of reach. The reasons could be many, could be thousands of distribution points in the market that the brand operates, P&L dilution due to price points or lack of retail experience as such, classic case pack model or business. So we decided to partner with the soon to be announced partner right here on this episode, a 3-part series with the team at Shoppable. Here you go, which has developed a fascinating multi-retailer checkout solution that enables brands to get the 1P related benefits of D2C without all the headaches and delays that come with supply chain fulfillment aspects of a D2C business. Oh yeah, with Shoppable, you can achieve a D2C-like experience with a light platform and lower costs. And our guest for the first part of this 3-episode show is the Director of Sales and Partnerships at Shoppable. She started her career in politics, working for the then Speaker of the House, followed by Northwest Mutual and ADP. And here she is at Shoppable, a distributed commerce technology company with a suite of e-commerce products surrounding Shoppable's patented universal checkout API, which actually enables the creation of these shoppable websites. Pretty impressive integration partners in the mix, in my estimation, and more impressive brand clients. Join us in welcoming Holly. How are you today?
Good. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm super excited to be a part of this 3-part series with you guys.
Did I get the description of Shoppable right?
Yeah, absolutely.
How about that, Peter?
Pretty similar to my elevator pitch.
How about that, Peter?
Shri, you're a master.
Living and learning. Holly, before we get to the questions here and begin this episode on D2C, would you please give our audience a quick summary of Shoppable's business, including how they can find you or how they can find Shoppable? How do they get in touch?
Yeah, so just a brief high-level overview on top of what you already said. Shoppable, we've been around since 2011, and we are a patented multi-retailer checkout technology. So definitely something that is the top of everyone's mind right now. And if you'd actually like to see it in action, as I'm sure so many people do, you could check it out on greenies.com. You could check it out on revlon.com, voltaireandgel.com. But if you want to learn more about the company as a whole, super easy. You can always go to shoppable.com, or you can set up some time to chat with me, and we could dive into it even further.
We're going to include a link to Shoppable in the liner notes of the podcast. So easy to find that. But thank you, Holly.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you, Holly. Thank you, Peter. So let's jump right into a special D2C episode, because Peter and I are quite intrigued by your business and just want to dig a little deeper today, especially this notion of how D2C can be established with a light platform quickly and at a significantly lower investment. So here's the first thing right off the bat. You think about D2C, it's one of those channels, experiences, and opportunities that's either a backbone for a brand, or as I said earlier, it's completely avoided, and it stokes some sort of fear that it's going to completely change the P&L or the construct of the brand. Why is this the case, Holly? Do you see this often?
I do. And, I think it has so much to do with just like history and time to market, right? You see the majority of brands that are not D2C, they're legacy brands that have been around for decades and decades before, the term e-commerce even really existed. And they really, engulfed these business models of, really great shelf space and good end caps and advertising. And they figured out how to make that work and how to make it work well. And then, you kind of look at the other part of the pie. There are these newer, more, digital e-commerce D2C brands, but when they came to market, they had a lot more tools and resources to kind of build their foundation on, right? They can spin up a Shopify store in a couple of hours, and with a good marketing team, get their stuff on Instagram, whatever it might be. So I think that, I don't necessarily think that I think people think too much into it, right? I think that, your time to market and what made sense at that moment had so much to do with the decision that you make. Obviously that's changing now, but I'd say that's kind of where the foundation of it all comes from.
Holly, thank you and welcome to the show. What do you see as being the distinct advantage for a brand being in D2C? I'm like, why would a scaled brand with a lot of retail distribution points also want to be in direct to consumer?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a ton of different reasons, right? I think we could sit here and name, 10s or 20 reasons, but the one that comes to my mind the most is just full visibility into your sales funnel, because that means so much, right? If you're a brand that is super focused on media and top of the funnel activity, it's really, really easy for you to tie bottom of the funnel activity all the way to the tip top. If you're a brand that maybe you don't even have that much media and you're really driven by word of mouth, regardless, you still understand what drives success. You understand what doesn't drive success, right? Just that full visibility into the sales funnel, I think, is so key in brands really understanding who their consumer is, how they want to shop, and then ultimately, how do you monetize that, right? I don't think it's any secret that a lot of these D2C brands are doing a really good job at that. I just bought a Billy razor about a month ago, and they're very much a millennial D2C brand. And, you have to start buying refills at probably every 3 months. Within a month or within a year's time, Billy's going to know my name. They're going to know my email. They're going to know my shipping address. They're going to know how often I need a new razor, how often I'm on their website. It just starts to tell you so much. And then they can react to that, right? I can guarantee if I go into my personal email right now, I have multiple emails from Billy letting me know about their newest launches or what's to come, or, hey, Holly, we think you're running low. That blade's probably pretty dull. Why don't you come refill? It just really presents a really strong opportunity to monetize on consumer behavior. And when you don't have that consumer behavior, it can create some black boxes, and it's challenging to operate in the same way.
I hear you, Holly, very much acknowledged. So I've always felt, Holly, the single biggest reason why D2C isn't prevalent in the CPG industry, it's what you started the previous answer with, which is distribution points, scale. The strength of a large brand is the marketing aspects and the consumer connection aspect. DTC, of course, is full funnel. You got to go from CPM and CPC down to CTR and then eventually the CVR part, which is traditionally handled by retailers. And so it's a skill set that large brands haven't traditionally acquired. Nothing wrong with that. It's just a model and the way it is, and it's worked for decades, if not a century long. But does Shoppable actually provide a D2C like bridge in the ecosystem and really connect to existing retail, or do you have to flex up and build retail muscle power?
I think that we provide a bridge in a couple of different ways, right? Like technology wise, we are the bridge between content, whether that's a brand's website or their advertisements, whatever it might be, and then the end retailer that ultimately fulfills all of their purchases. Like we are legitimately a technological bridge with our multi-retailer checkout solution. But to answer your question, Shri, is that there does have to be somewhat of a presence in those retailers for us to connect it to the content, right? Because that's what we are. We're technology. We understand what's available for purchase within those retailers' e-commerce ecosystems, and we pull that in and it gets to the end consumer, but ultimately the experience is going to happen right there within the CPG's content, again, whatever that might be. So I see Shoppable as like a technology bridge, like I said, between content and retailer. But I also see Shoppable as kind of like a roadmap bridge for these brands, right? I mean, I'm sure you guys have heard it. I hear it all the time. You hear these legacy brands talk about like, okay, we're trying to decide, do we want to go direct to consumer? We're going through the strategy. We're trying to figure out what it's going to cost. Is it worth it? And Shoppable really gives brands the ability to understand if that's a good idea or not, right? There's a lot of decisions that go into it. And if you can have a little bit of an idea of how your consumer wants to shop and how they prefer to shop before you dive headfirst into that insane investment, it allows you to shift your roadmap a little bit, right? Maybe it's like, okay, these brands over here, we've learned that D2C is great. Their price point, the way people buy them, we should dive head first. Whereas these ones over here, maybe they actually aren't going to perform that great. And we shouldn't figure out if it's profitable or not to ship it to South Dakota from our Texas warehouse or whatever it might be. That's kind of what Shoppable allows these brands to do is dip their toe in that water just a little bit and get some real data to make decisions on before they, dive head first.
So what I hear, Holly, and tell me if I got this right, what you can do with Shoppable's technology is you're not the where to buy, but you're the actual buy now. And what you do is brands can leverage the partnerships they have with existing retailers, their distributors at the end of the day. And through the buy now button on a brand's actual website, a consumer can actually purchase a product at the retailer of their choice.
Yep.
And does it also show price across different retailers?
It does. Yeah. So
wonderful.
It obviously when people think about buying a product outside of a retailer's environment, right? The necessity to get all of that information right is key. Understanding the price, is it in stock? Is it out of stock? Will it ship to me? All of those things. How close am I to free shipping? If I buy a couple more products, will I get free shipping? That's all super, super important because the last thing we want is for a customer to enter that credit card information and then find out that maybe we gave them the wrong information. So it's a key part of the Shoppable product is making sure that we are getting that accurate information from retail partners to display within the CPG brand's environment.
Peter, what do you think? To me, it's the Instacart for brands to be able to work with retailers directly. Any thoughts there, Peter?
Yeah, except the brands actually get a tremendous amount of information and insights from this. So it is
And
very
the
intriguing.
physical goods doesn't have to
Yeah.
transfer, it's already in the retailer's warehouse. So simplifies the whole process significantly without the supply chain weight.
Yeah, I agree. So Holly, can you give us a little bit of information about the end-to-end client experience of working with Shoppable? I mean, once a brand decides, okay, I like what they have, I think that my brand will operate well within this framework. What
Yep.
happens next? How long does it take to typically implement? I know you can't give me an exact, it takes 3 days or whatever,
Yep.
but give us an idea. And then I'd also love to hear about, if you can, some of the major distribution endpoints.
14 days, 7 hours and 33 seconds. And I didn't say any
Great.
minutes, Peter. You should be happy.
Yeah. And to finish my question, major distribution endpoints that I, as a client, should expect to leverage through your platform.
Yeah. So obviously, hopefully that means I did my job really well. I got people excited. I got them moving, and we have a contract signed. We're good to go. From that point, that you really have all hands on deck from the Shoppable team, right? You have the support of us, and implementation. As I'm sure all CPGs know, some move really quick, some move really slow. But I'd say on average, we see about a 30-day implementation period. I've seen it done in as quick as probably about 2 weeks. I've seen it drag a little bit longer.
Hold on, Ali. I want to call that out. So traditionally, if you're trying to stand up D2C, it's usually, even if you start up with the lightest of software as a service platforms, we're probably looking at a 90 to 100-day startup ecosystem. You're telling me we can do this in 30 days?
Yeah. I mean, if you have your agency involved or your internal team involved, 30 days is 100% well within the reach. And that's something that Shoppable is working on every day, right? How do we make this faster? How do we put things in front of you that are really plug and play? But today, as it stands, and I'd love to update you guys if it gets any better, but yeah, right about 30 days.
That's pretty impressive, I have to say. That is absolutely phenomenal. So back to my question. Can you name some of the distribution endpoints that consumers would expect to get products fulfilled from that are part of your network right now?
Yeah, for sure. So Walmart, Target, Walgreens, Rite Aid, CVS. I'd say those are some of our biggest players. And what I'd also say is that when I talk to CPG partners, they might have a few others that might be worth the squeeze, but ultimately, if they can get those 5, they have a lot of really good distribution to collect all that data from.
Shri, have you heard of any of those? They're vaguely familiar. I think we might know them.
I might have seen them on an analyst report in my past life. Just kidding, folks. Obviously, the retailers that you named and Peter referred to over here probably cover a good significant portion of any brand's retail distribution points. So congratulations on getting there, Holly.
Thank you. Yeah, it's definitely it's a huge driver in the success of a multi-retailer checkout, to ensure that you have the merchant partners that people need to leverage your checkout.
So Holly, just listen to Peter ask you that question and you responding. You said 30 days to get this done, and you've got a plethora of distribution points and networks already that you connect with. The first thought that comes to my mind for a brand is, there's got to be an order of magnitude savings here versus a full D2C stack implementation. Are you comfortable sharing for our audience what someone's looking at here from an order of magnitude standpoint?
I mean, I thought about this a little bit, and I don't, because I'm not the expert on that, I don't want to give like an actual number. But what I've learned over my last, 2.5 years here at Shoppable is that implementing D2C is not cheap, right? I mean, I've heard quotes of in the millions, plus obviously the salary of all the people that have to manage it, and your logistics platform or your Shopify or BigCommerce or all these things. There's so much that goes into the cost of a direct to consumer model. Whereas Shoppable is an annual license fee, one-time fee that, feel free to email me if you're looking for a more legit quote. But when I say it's people see it as like an astronomical savings. I mean, it's very, very high in savings compared to going truly D2C.
So is it safe to say, this sort of a footprint, there's no capital required. It's really like a annual recurring significantly smaller expense versus like writing an actual capital plan?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, here's the thing. I think that when you implement any type of e-commerce solution, you're going to want people on your team that are managing that solution, right? Whether it is an affiliate link, whether it is a full-blown D2C, but with Shoppable, we're doing the majority of your direct-to-consumer heavy lifting, right? Now, you're going to want to pay attention to it. Like, we want to talk to your Facebook team or your Instagram team or your media teams, your media comms. We want to talk to them because we want to best support them and making sure they get the most out of it. But ultimately, if you wanted to just, pop it on the site and see how it went, that's really that's the most of it. Is that the best use of it? Of course not. But you can definitely get it stood up with very limited capital on the customer side.
So thinking about brands that have built a front end for e-commerce, they oftentimes leverage platforms. So what I'd like to understand from you is, what types of integrations have you established with major platforms? I'm assuming like Shopify is probably one of the ones at the top of the list for most of your brands. And if not, when you're talking with brands about establishing that, how do you advise them on fully scaled ERP implementations versus, sending to omnichannel or pureplay? What are all the kind of things that you're considering as you're dealing, or your brands are considering as they're thinking about implementing you as part of their D2C strategy?
Yeah. So I think that the first thing to really make sure people know is that Shoppable, we have a group of products that we offer, right? But ultimately, they're built on top of a suite of APIs at a very, very raw form. So
Okay.
the good news is that it's platform agnostic. I think, we have customers that are built on WordPress. We have customers that have their content management on Adobe Experience. I think we've probably built an experience on Wix at some point, which is like the absolute lowest of upkeep for a website, right? So for us and for brands that aren't looking to invest in a robust platform that needs to handle e-commerce, we could integrate with a Shopify, or if you're using Shopify as your CMS, but you don't have to. But it's up to you. Whatever you want to do, it's platform agnostic. But another thing to notice is that Shopify is really a keystone product, right? What I'm just talking about is the integration that happens on the Shoppable customer side, the content management of the customer, of the CPG of the brand. But on the flip side, we also have to have integrations with our merchant partners to ensure that this flow of data works really well. And when we talk about these legacy massive retailers, they're obviously built on custom platforms, and they're not, Walmart isn't built on Shopify, right? But we have a really great way to manage that and make sure that the integration is great. But kind of to your point, Peter, is that we have an app in the Shopify store right now where if a merchant is like, hey, I want my products to be featured within the Shoppable catalog, all they have to do is go to Shopify, download that app. Next thing you know, they can push all of their products to all of our customers. And I know today we're talking mostly about CPG, and, CPG is probably not going to care if Holly's knit sweaters built on Shopify are available in our platform. But we have publishing partners. We have people that are creating cool ad experiences. So those type of merchant integrations make it easier for people on the other side of the Shoppable aisle to get their products in front of a whole set of customers that maybe they just didn't even know before.
That is incredibly powerful, Holly. Thank you. Shri, I'm impressed. I honestly think that the cpgguys.com site, which is built on MySpace, has a chance of making it into okay, maybe it's not on anyhow.
Besides providing education, that was our cheap attempt at humor. That's the second thing we do.
Yeah.
I mean, I wish that I still had my old MySpace. I feel like that would be a really great walk down memory lane.
Oh, I've moved beyond.
You mentioned user experience, and you mentioned it quite extensively back there, right? And the integration with Shopify, etc. So I'd love to know, does Shoppable actually, is it like a true full stack? It supports user experience, privacy, advertising, however to connect with fulfillment. In this case, it's the retailer. So that's all the payment part of it and the security part of it. Can you just give us an overview from end to end of the stack?
Yeah. So I think it's important to note that Shoppable is a bottom of the funnel technology, right? Like we are a checkout technology, but ultimately when you're multi-retailer, you have to work your way up the funnel to ensure that you're, like we talked about, putting the right products out available, or the right products that are there for shipping, things like that. So we, like I talked about before, again, we're built on top of raw APIs, right? Over time, Shoppable has realized that CPGs, they want something quick. They want something easy. They don't want to invest a ton of resources into it if they don't have to. So we've built JavaScript to make the implementation of the UX and the UI a little bit easier. So we are helping to manage the UX and the UI of it. I think when it comes to advertising, while we're not necessarily powering advertising, we're not doing any of the actual creative piece of it. When you have an Instagram ad and it drives right to a category page for a CPG brand and you can check out, that's pretty powerful, right? Now we know Instagram ad A drove X amount of revenue and this order and these products, whatever it might be. So we don't directly help to manage advertising, but we help pull them down the funnel. The other thing that I think is really important to note, you say privacy, right? It's another big thing that a lot of CPGs don't want to deal with if they don't have to. Credit cards, right? Like no one wants to touch credit card information if they don't have to. No one wants to go through the audits, the compliance. Like it's a pain in the butt and everyone knows it. The good news is that Shoppable has built a product called our hosted checkout. And the whole idea is to take all of that responsibility off of the CPG, right? The credit card system, the credit cards go through us. The data goes through us. We manage the audit. We manage the compliance, and you just get to reap the benefits. So Shoppable takes data privacy and PCI compliance and all of that really, really seriously. But the reason that we have to is so that the brands just don't have to worry about it.
Holly, you mentioned that you take away the issue of credit card transactions. Is it actually cleared by you, or is it cleared by the fulfilling retailer in a transaction through a Shoppable enabled site?
Yeah, no, that's actually a really great question, and one that we get during every process. Shoppable and the brand, we are not the merchant of record. We simply act as a pass-through. We have to do some verification to ensure that the credit card is legit and it's not fraudulent, but ultimately we act as a pass-through, and then Walmart or whatever merchant is fulfilling the order, they process that credit card, their fraud systems are in place, and they remain the merchant of record, which in my opinion is 100% the best way to do it. Like getting anyone else involved just seems a little bit silly. So let them handle it.
You know, when you get into controlled categories like alcohol in particular, that's the only way to do it, honestly.
Right.
But that's really helpful. So let me close this out in our conversation today, Holly. In leaving a message to our audience that are in the brand area, what do you see as being truly the compelling proposition of why Shoppable is the right option for many brands?
Yeah, I mean, it's really funny. I actually found you guys on LinkedIn. I know you mentioned we were talking about a little bit about LinkedIn before, but I just saw an article today on LinkedIn that was talking about how Kellogg's, Kraft, General Mills, and it was one other packaged food, PepsiCo, have built out direct to consumer channels specifically for the 1P data. Like the whole article was about how they're investing in these brand sites with full-blown D2C models to get the 1P data. And I think 1P data is probably the buzzword of 2020 to 2021. I think everyone's trying to figure out how to do it and how to get it. Going direct to consumer specifically for 1P data is really, really expensive, right? We talk about P&L, we talk about logistics, we talk about shipping. You deal with all of that so that at the end of the day, you can get that 1P data. You know, they can know that Holly Boni with an email of holly@shoppable.com in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, purchased that Billy razor, right? That's what they're after. That's what they want. And they're willing to do this huge lift for that data when you just don't have to, because the biggest value of Shoppable is that we host that transaction within your brand experience. So even though, yes, Walmart knows that Holly with holly@shoppable.com bought this red Revlon lipstick and this, peach blush. Yes, they know that. They get it. They keep it. They're happy. They're not mad at anybody. Revlon or whoever the CPG is also gets it. They have full visibility into that sales funnel. They're able to upload that information into their CRM, and they're able to monetize it. They're able to optimize on it. And the end result might differ slightly when it comes to going completely D2C. But if you're really after that 1P data, Shoppable can give it to you. And it's just so much easier.
Yeah, and that data from our conversations with brands, Shri and I have come to understand, it's immeasurably valuable for brands looking to negotiate more favorable terms as they launch new products in the marketplace. It can really help them in some of their traditional omnichannel relationships to help them be more successful. So yeah, that 1P data is tremendously valuable.
Yeah, and just like a real life example of it, I demo our real live examples every day. And I always make sure that I point out during the checkout piece, like, hey, make sure that your customer knows to opt into this, CRM, whatever. So I always opt in and I demo it and I show it. But in turn, now Holly Boni lives in their systems. When I say that some of our current customers have done some really cool things and some really unique things with my data and what I purchased because I opted in, I'm impressed every single day. I'm getting emails, telling me like, hey, we know you liked this. We recommend you buy that next time you come back. Or I get a coupon to the merchant that I chose to fulfill my order within the experience. And it's real, right? Like it's not this grand idea of like, oh, well, if we had the data, we could do something with it. The brands that are working with Shoppable are doing really, really cool things, and they're seeing an uptick from it. Like they are proving out that legacy brands can operate like these new, nimble, digital e-commerce startups with that data and get the same type of results.
Holly, thank you so much for that engaging conversation. I'd like to remind our audience that you can always find all our content easily on cpgguys.com. Yes, it's just cpgguys.com. And as always, you shape the content of our podcast and the education we'd like to provide back to the industry. So please do rate us. The best way to do it, ratethispodcast.com/cpgguys. Peter and I do read it often, and we try to bring on guests that you have recommended to the show so that we can advance this common mission of education for the industry. Holly, I want to thank you for being here and having this engaging dialogue on D2C and how a significantly lighter footprint can actually enable a D2C-like feel, and you could still hold on and keep growing the existing distribution point network retailers and partnerships that a brand has. If somebody wants to get to know more about Shoppable, could you tell our audience again where they can do that? Do they just come to you? Do they go to a website? How's this done?
If you really liked what you heard, I encourage you to go to the Shoppable website if you're, just looking to browse, which then you can, of course, book a meeting with me.
I want to remind our audience this was just part one of a 3-part series that we're doing with Shoppable to get into the weeds of DTC. Really take a deep dive. This episode was all about how you can achieve it with a light footprint. Episode 2, a date to be announced soon. We have Heather, the founder and CEO of Shoppable, chatting with us about her journey, why she created Shoppable, how the journey has been the last decade. So much more to come in that. And episode 3 will actually feature one of their clients, so we can talk to them about how they've enabled it for success, how they work with their retail partners, etc. So more to come on those episodes shortly. Peter, as always, week over week, a pleasure doing this with you.
Shri, thanks. This was great.
To our audience, we'll see you back shortly with the next episode of the CPG Guys. Thank you.